There we go. Chris, this book is epic. It's brilliant. And we are just so thrilled to have you here with us to talk about it. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. So, where is everyone? Are you all in different places? Like
We
in the country?
are. Yep, we're all across the US. Maybe a few Canadians here. Um, and sometimes we have a friend who joins us from India. I don't see her on. So I think mostly all across the US and maybe some Canada. And you're joining us from the UK where it's a little bit later
Yeah,
in the night, right?
it is. Yeah, but not too late. Like sometimes I have to do them at like midnight and things like that. It's only 8 o'clock here, so it's quite
Okay.
nice.
Oh, good. I did check with your publicist. I was like, is it okay? Is that too late? And she's like, oh no, he's a night
No,
owl. It's
I am a night owl. I am a night owl.
fine.
Yeah. I have
That's
3 kids, so I never sleep.
yep, same, same, yep. Uh, well, this story is so fun to unpack with a book club because there are so many things to discuss and so many threads that you have going throughout the story. Um,
Mhm.
we've all read and loved the book, so we would love for this conversation to be as spoiler filled as
Okay.
possible. So don't censor yourself. I know on your book tour you probably have to be really careful about what you're giving away, but we want to hear all the things today.
Okay. This is really nice. So it won't be on YouTube or anything like that.
We will share the link with people who are in our reading group
Okay.
who want to read it, and the
Yeah.
people it'll we'll post it to YouTube, but it will be for the group that goes
Okay.
knowing that
Yeah,
is
so just
spoiler
be clear
filled.
that it's like going to spoil the book and things like
Yes,
that. Yeah,
absolutely.
they
Yes.
make me be so careful about it. I have it
Yes.
drilled into me to be really
Yes.
careful about it. So this is really nice to be able to
Yes.
talk about anything.
Please, we would love for you to spoil spoil away. Um, so Ivana and I will start the conversation just with a few kind of softball questions to you, easy
Okay.
ones to get started, and then we will, like I said, open the conversation up to some readers, and we will moderate questions from our group. So just to get us started, will you talk a little bit about what it's been like to have All the Colors of the Dark be published and get just incredible traction with like Read with Jenna and Jill Biden's reading this on the beach and what has that been like for you?
That was a surreal one. That
Mhm.
one because I heard that. So I heard that my last book, We Begin at the End. I knew that Bill Clinton had read that, and then this one, I knew that Jenna's dad had read it and Jenna's sister, and then Jill Biden was like, when you get properly starstruck. Because I just thought, I was sitting in the garden in this garden office that I built, writing the book for 4 years in this small town that I live in outside London, and then all of a sudden the book's kind of made it to the White House, which is just like really for someone like me, that didn't do well at school and didn't think that they shouldn't be a writer. It's really like really, really special to see
Yeah.
that. And I wouldn't have seen it if it wasn't for everyone, sending the picture to me.
Mhm.
Because I'm not great online. I tend to miss everything. So people have to tag me in to let me know. So that was like this weird day where because the first picture that came out was someone saying that she was reading it, but it was really blurry, so I couldn't see it. So I wondered how they knew, but then there was a really clear one, and I sent it to my agent and my editor, and then it went a bit mad after that. But it's been really cool. It's so long that I spend writing it on my own, that the first few people that read it are like closely linked to the book. So it'll be editors, copy editors, the PR team, and they say that they like it, but then they have to kind of. So you don't really know how it's going to be received until the first reviews come in. And the first reviews that one of the first people that I spoke to outside of the core group was Jenna that had read it. So which was weird in itself because the first meeting I had with her was like for TV because she wanted to produce it. She wanted to turn it into a TV series. This was before the Read with Jenna thing, like a year before it was published. And so she was one of the first people that I met. And then it came out, and the first time I saw it was in Aspen because I flew out there to meet Jenna to do like we were doing this. this event in Aspen, and we were there for 3 days. And I walked into a bookstore and saw it on the shelf for the first time ever. Like because normally they send you the copy way before it comes out, but
Yeah.
because I was traveling, I'd missed it. So that was the first time I saw the finished book, and it was really special. And it hasn't really stopped since then. Like I haven't stopped smiling in like 2 months now. I have face ache from smiling so much. It's really nice.
That's amazing. I'm sure it's been a different experience publishing since We Begin at the End, which was previously
COVID.
like one of my all-time favorite books until this one. I was nervous picking up this book because I'm like, how could it possibly be We Begin at the End? Like, and they're both incredible. So the publishing experience must have been a little bit different though, because that was kind of in the wake of COVID, and now here we're
It was really different. It was because it was amazing and it was a life-changing book. We Begin at the End, but there was a kind of disconnect because everything was done through Zoom and everything. Like if I did, even in the UK when it published, like occasionally when we were allowed to go out, I would go to the bookstores and they would say like that they're 90% down on footfall, the amount of people that going into the shop to buy books. So it was, and it felt eerily quiet, and everyone was like quite rightly distracted by something massive that was going on.
Mhm.
And but on the flip side, everyone needed some comfort and some, entertainment and some escapism. So it was just weird, wasn't it, COVID? When we look back at it now, I can't quite believe that that was the world. Like my kids possibly won't remember it, but they'll probably teach it in school, won't they, when they get older, that like this time when the entire world shut down. And yeah, it was just yeah. So to have a book out during it was mixed because until then, like I knew it was going to be the best book that I'd written until Colours. Um, but I also knew that it would publish at a time when it might well just miss everyone. So it was that like this kind of weird mixed feelings on it. But this time it's been entirely amazing. And like you were nervous about reading this
Yeah.
one. I was really nervous about writing it.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Will you talk to us a little bit about the inspiration for this story? And it sounds like it took you a while to write as well. But how did this story get started?
So it was probably like a year before We Begin at the End came out. I had the idea for it, and it was a really simple top line pitch, and it was two abducted teenagers fall in love in the pitch black basement they're being held in, having never seen each other. The boy escapes and can't find his way back to the girl. So that was like the setup for what sounds like a mystery. And the I was moving UK publisher and had a really like I was locked into a contract with them, and then We Begin at the End came out and did really well, and I wanted to leave because I needed more money. I never saw my kids. I was working 3 jobs, and they tried to kind of hold me to this contract, and then there was an NDA, and it was a really messy breakup. And so I moved to a new publisher. So I had a new team, and I had this pitch for a book. And Amy in the US, who published We Begin at the End, was moving to Crown to Penguin. So I went with her. So I had completely new teams and just this idea for this book about a pirate and a beekeeper. And then they kind of just left me alone with it, which was what I needed. And I missed deadline by like I think it was 2 years. I was 2 years late with the book, but at no point did they kind of really pressure me. They just checked in, and I was given this real freedom to write whatever story I wanted to write. And so whilst they thought they were getting a mystery, it turned into something way bigger because I would meet with my editor every few months we'd meet in this restaurant in Soho in London, and he'd just check that I was okay. And I'd say like, oh, I'm writing this scene at the moment where the boy is building a house, the patch, and he was like puzzled because he thought he'd bought a crime thriller, like a mystery. So why is he building a house? What's going on? And I said, oh, he's laying down roots because he's got a daughter now. And, nothing really quite fit with the book that I'd pitched. But at no point did they kind of pull me up on it. They just gave me complete freedom and support and got the best book that I've written, by a mile. This is like I never get nervous for anything. And I was nervous for this book to come out because I knew that I couldn't do any better. I thought this is the absolute best at the moment, it's the absolute best book that I can write. And if people don't like it, I kind of don't have anything else. So it felt, for the first time, I felt nervous.
Wow. Anna is asking in the chat, what genre would you consider this? And it is so hard to
Hard.
put in a box.
It is. It's really difficult. And I think it's the last thing that I consider when I'm writing the book. You know, who's going to read it, how they're going to market it, what's the cover going to look like, where is it going to sit in the library, in the bookstores? You know, I never think of any of that stuff. I'm just so completely involved in the story.
Mhm.
And then afterwards we sit down and read it and try and work out what kind of book I've written, which is a strange way around to do it. But
Yeah.
um, I would I wouldn't call it crime fiction for definite. You know, I think the crime is the least interesting part of the book.
Mm.
Um, we don't really, so in the UK, in the US, you have mystery, don't you, as a category? We don't really have that in the UK. We have crime fiction and then we have general fiction, and there's nothing really in between.
Mm-hmm.
So it would probably go in general fiction.
Okay.
Probably I would put it there. But then the UK cover, I think, looks slightly crime,
Yeah.
more so than the US cover. It's a tricky one, isn't it? And then there was a massive discussion about how best to market it. You know, who are you going for? Who are you trying to appeal to? And I was slightly against them going down a crime road.
Yeah.
So that was my like what I've won awards in and things like that. I just thought if you go into the crime section in the UK, the book would sit alongside James Patterson and you know, like a Jack Reacher book, and it doesn't really belong there because I think those readers might expect something different. So it was, yeah, I'm glad it wasn't my job.
I think the marketing was really smart on this as well because you're right. Sometimes if the marketing team's like, hey, there's this thriller, you really come to expect like these jaw-dropping twists or kind of like this fast-paced situation. But what you're doing is so different. You're setting the stage for something that is a slow build, but
Mhm.
so rewarding and so satisfying. And so I think it's smart the way it's marketed. Like the one of the first things that you hear is that it's like genre bending, and you're like, okay, so it
Yeah.
opens your mind up. And so I think it was really smart to go that route.
Yeah, and I think it really is important who blurbs the book. You know, who do they put on the cover?
Hmm.
And you have to get the mix right because we had Gillian Flynn and Kristen Hanna. And
Yeah.
and so, you know, if you can appeal to both of those sets of readers, you know, I think you're gonna find that sweet spot
Hmm.
that we were looking for. And so it's always really crucial because if you have just crime writers blurbing something, you're going to get their readers, I think, more so than you will. Like Kristen Hanna was perfect and has been very, very kind because she's just the absolute best, you know, and her books are beautifully written. And so to have her on the front of my book, you know, it's kind of gives confidence to her readers, you know, that
Yeah.
they might pick up something that they might not necessarily look at and
Yeah.
enjoy it, take a chance on it. So I'm really grateful.
Mm. I'm so glad.
We were just talking before you even hopped on here, just about the way that you structure your writing,
Mhm.
with the short chapters. And some of us have found even the sentences tend to be, shorter, but they pack such a punch. Like, how did
Mhm.
you decide how to structure this book? Because it is,
Um,
however, 600 pages,
it is,
200 chapters,
yeah. So partly there were two reasons for it. The first one is it's a really long book, and to have to break it up makes it an easier read. It makes it a faster read. It enables you to say just one more chapter before bed or something like that. And then if the chapter's only 2 or 3 pages, it's no, you know, it's not that daunting to go into a new chapter. But probably more so was it was really difficult to write, and I kept breaking, and I wrote the book out of order. So if I was sitting down writing Patch and him being in the basement, it was really difficult. And I probably spent like 4 or 5 months writing that relatively short piece of writing, relatively short period in the book, and it would affect my mood, and I would find it really, really tough to write Patch and write the darkness. So I would constantly break, and I would switch and write Sammy, or I would switch and write Charlotte, and I'd go back and forth between them, so that when I came to read it again, it was all broken down into short snippets. And I really like that. And I thought, it gives the reader the choice whether to break, in these difficult parts or keep pushing on. And so that really worked for me as a writer. And hopefully I've had loads of messages from people saying that it really works, for
It
for
never,
a book size.
to me, and I think I've heard from others, it never felt long. It never felt, you know, even with just like all the emotions and everything, it just never felt too much. So kudos to you because that's,
Thank you.
yes,
Yeah, yeah, because it can be daunting.
yes,
There's nothing like that puts you off more, certainly me. If I pick up a giant book with tiny text in it,
yes.
I just think this is too much. I'm not going to be able to read this on the beach. I don't know, have a job and kids. I don't know when I'll fit this in. So yeah, it
Even
really,
I'm an English teacher at a middle school, and I try to convince my students to love reading. And many of them will look at any books in the library that are too thick and just go, nope, no
yeah,
thanks, no thanks.
yeah.
If I can find books that are written in such a, interesting kind of short and snippety
Mhm.
kind of way, that's how we get even the kids to love to read too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I get it.
yeah.
You really create such memorable characters, really in all of your books. And they just are flawed, but they make this home in your heart, and then they just live there. I was talking with Rebecca, and I still think about Duchess Day Radley, and I read that book years ago. And so, how do you create really just such characters that jump off the page? It feels so personal, it feels really intimate. And what is that like for you?
It's long and really difficult, and I spent so with this book, I spent the first year just writing dialogue, just conversations between Patch and Saint, and then so that was probably 6 months, and then 6 months in, I brought in other characters, and it's the first time I'd done it in that way, and I really got to know the characters really, really well because like I'd have these scenes that I'd write between Patch and Saint where they'd just be going for a walk or something like that, and I learned loads about, what Patch would offer up and what Saint would show, which side of themselves do they show to each other. Like, and there's a bit in the book, and Saint doesn't realize what Patch's home life is like because he never tells her until she walks up to his front door and looks through the window and sees him caring for his mother because he won't show her that side of himself. And like for her part, she's like fiercely intelligent and she reins it in constantly because she thinks that people don't want to know or don't want to be friends with a really clever girl. And so I had all these conversations with them, and by the end of it, I knew them so well that I knew that when I started the story, like when I wrote the first scenes of Patch walking to school and hearing Misty scream, I knew exactly how he would react and why. And it was a really good way of doing it. And I think I'll probably do it again like that. And then year two, I spent writing scenes that were in the wrong order, kind of like how they film TV. And then year three, I begin putting it together and it begins to look like a book. And it's massively overwritten and it's way too long. And then we begin to cut and we cut and cut until it gets to closer to story size. And then copy editors and everyone else comes in. But this book was it was just really difficult to write and it was really difficult to end as well. So I couldn't write the ending. I couldn't find the final words. I knew how I wanted it to end, and I just couldn't write the last lines. And I think that was probably because I was so invested in the characters that I didn't want to say goodbye to them. I didn't want it to be published. I didn't want to lose them, for because I knew that I wouldn't be able to go back there again. So I had this time and I was looking for this ending. And it was so late, we were going to publication and I still hadn't ended the book and I didn't know, I knew where Patch was going. And then I knew that this area in, OBX, I knew that that was roughly where they made purple honey, the only place in the world. So I knew Patch would end up there. But I just by chance read a newspaper article about this guy who'd been traveling around there, and he kept seeing these OBX bumper stickers. And so I Googled it, and like, why did they have a pirate on them? And that was when I found out that that's where Blackbeard hid. And I knew that Patch was looking for somewhere to hide out. And so it felt like this perfect meant to be, serendipitous ending. And it came like maybe a week or two before I was supposed to deliver it, for the final time. And so that was what I think I was waiting for. But it was just like, it really might not have happened in that way. But it felt too perfect, that the place that they make purple honey is the place that Blackbeard hid,
Mm,
and I'm writing a book about a pirate and a beekeeper. It was the ending it was supposed to be.
yeah, that's incredible.
Fantastic
Yeah.
ending.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
And a lot of our readers too are wondering, you being from the UK, but you write, the United States so well. There was lots of questions from readers. How did you do that? And how I mean, you're better at it than someone like me who lives here and teaches, okay, but don't tell anybody. Just it was amazing. How did you map it all out and know so much? And
Well, I hadn't been to any of the places, any
oh,
of them, and it was only when I did the US book tour recently,
mhm.
that I started to see some of the places that were in the book. And it was it was like painstaking research at first. I was working in the library, and I would devote all of my time to research, and I would read fiction and non-fiction, and I listened to audio, and I listened to kind of people reading transcripts, from the areas, so you can pick up on speech patterns and accents and cadence and things like that. So I had all of this stuff going on, and then when it came to actually writing scenes, I work across three screens, and on the middle screen will be the manuscript, and on the left hand screen will be what I'm writing, like what it looks like. So if Saint is taking a walk in the woodland, I'll have pictures of the woodland that she's walking through. And then on the right hand screen, I'll have, a list of the trees that would be growing, what the air temperature would be like, what the ground would feel like underfoot, what she can hear, what she can smell, what kind of birds would be singing at that time in Missouri in the 70s, that exact time of day. And once you piece all of these things together, I overwrite the scene massively, and I describe every single detail and then cut back until what you're left with is the feeling that you're walking beside Saint. So you're taking a walk next to her. And I do that for every single scene in the book. And it's why it takes so long. It's why it took 4 years to write. And it's only by doing that, that kind of grinding it out. There's no shortcut for that process. It's only by doing that that it feels to me like it's real. And that's really important, because I want you to read the book and feel like you're in it and feel like they're real people. And when it ends, you should miss them and care about them. And yeah. But
Yeah.
there's still an element of guesswork involved, because I don't really know what it's like to walk through those Missouri woodlands.
Mhm.
I just know that I'm a strong believer in that gut feeling. And if it feels right, then probably I'm close to getting it right, or closer to getting it right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you did everything that you said, and we felt everything that you wanted people to feel. So that's incredible.
Yeah, very meticulous with
Yeah.
that process. And
Oh,
we talked to a
sure.
lot of authors, and I haven't heard an author describe their process in that way. And I've
Mhm.
never had an author describe writing just their dialogue first, which is so fascinating to me. And so it seems like you
Well,
just,
I always think that, like, if you think of the relationships in your life, if you think
Mhm.
of your partner, if you think of your friends, how do you get to know them at first? And the entire thing is conversation. And what you tell them at the beginning is different to what you tell them further on down the line. How much of yourself do you let them see, and how much do you keep hidden? And we all present sides of ourselves at the beginning. You could, like I say in the book, I think that they got to know the shiniest parts of each other. And that's what you do, at the very beginning. And it's really telling, because you kind of present the person that you want them to see, and that's probably close to the person that you want to be. Particularly for Patch, he doesn't want to be someone that's pitied. So
Mhm.
he doesn't tell Saint anything about his, his difficult childhood and difficult home life. He just wants her to see this kind of this boy that's funny and he really projects, particularly with the pirate thing. And so that it was a really good way to get to know them, rather than just watching what they do.
Yeah. I think that really, really comes through with those characters as well as just your strong sense of place. I had a question that Amy, one of our readers, submitted ahead of time. She is from the St. Louis area. And so she said she's got these clear memories of kidnappings of young girls when she was growing up. And she's really curious how you ended up choosing Missouri as the setting for Patch and Saint's hometown.
So it was really difficult actually, because I'd been writing this book for like 8 months, something like that, and I had no location for it because nothing. I researched so many places in America, and nothing felt quite right. And I need that gut feeling. And I was working in the library, and it was quite late. It was after the library had closed, and I was flipping through a non-fiction book, and it was just photographs of the US. And I came across this photograph of a place called Dogwood Canyon, the national park, and it was so beautiful. And I kind of got this feeling like I need to, this at the very least, this has to be in the book. And it does make it into the book. It's the scene that it's not called that in the book. I changed the name because the location didn't quite work. But Saint is riding the bus with her grandmother, and she's looking out through the window, and she describes all the things she can see. And that what she can see is Dogwood Canyon. And so then I began to research Missouri in more detail, and it really fit in the story that I was trying to sell. And I wanted Patch to be this pirate that's kind of landlocked, that's never been near the water. So you have this beautiful scene later where he first discovers, the ocean, and I think he phones Sammy, and he sees the boats and stands there kind of, he's completely awestruck by everything he's seeing. And yeah, and it works really well because I think so that one of the first meetings that I took about film and TV adaptation was with the writer that is currently writing the TV series. And she said that they needed, it's underrepresented, that area, in TV and stories and fiction and things like that. And I didn't know that. I was all about how it looks and how it feels.
Do you think you'll ever come do a road trip across the United States?
So the last two tours, and I'm coming back again next month, actually, in October for another tour, and then again in November, and then again in January.
Oh,
But I did loads. I would love to do it and have some time because I saw everything from the windows of aeroplanes and out the windows of cars that picked me up. But flying over Missouri was really cool because I thought this is where the story happens, and I went to St. Louis and did an event there, but I was there for like one night. Got there quite late, had dinner, did the event, and then flew away again the next morning. But I would like to spend some proper time there.
Mhm. Kristen had a great question that I was wondering about too. Kristen asked, is there a reason you choose the US over England or somewhere that you're more familiar with as your setting?
Yeah, so I was mugged as a teenager and stabbed, and I went to writing as PTSD, like a treatment for PTSD. I did writing as therapy because I had a really crap time afterwards, and I borrowed a self-help book, and it talked about a therapeutic technique where you take the traumatic incident and you write about it, but you change the people involved to fictional characters, and you change the location to the last place you were happy. And my dad took me and my brother to Disney World when we were kids. And so my happy place was Disney World, and in the US in Florida. So when I sat down to kind of do this exercise, and every time since that I've sat down to write, I travel 4,000 miles mentally and leave London behind because I was having a really difficult time in London. So I travel 4,000 miles, and all of a sudden, I don't have all this stress and difficulties and things like that, and I can just focus on a story. So it really got me through it. And we were standing in line in Disney World, and there was a family in front of us, and they talked about Montana, and they said it was the most beautiful place on earth, and it was like switching from portrait to landscape. That's how they described it, and that line made it into We Begin at the End, which was partly set in Montana, because and yeah, so it was because of that, and so the US has become my safer place, for my imagination and just escaping my life here. And since then, everyone has been like they're the kindest people I've ever met. Everyone across the board on my tours and the book clubs that I do, everyone has just been really, really kind in the US, which is really nice.
Well, thank you. And what a full circle experience to
Hmm.
have this trauma happen to you and to, as a result of that, have so much beauty and your ability to share, these stories from your mental happy place with the world. I mean, that's really incredible.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have, without a doubt, I wouldn't have become a writer had that not happened to me.
Mhm.
Because I went to a rubbish school. And no one became a writer that went to my school. I left school with no qualifications, and it was only through trauma that I kind of found my way to art, which is Patch, in the book. This terrible thing happens to Patch, and he is a kid that would never pick up a paintbrush. And he becomes a wealthy, successful artist because of it. It's a byproduct of this terrible thing that happens. And so it's kind of a nod to the title, All the Colors of the Dark. All of this color comes into his life because of this terrible dark thing that happens to him. He's probably a kid that wouldn't leave the town that he grew up in. And all of a sudden he's traveling across the whole of the US seeing the most beautiful things. And he lives such a full life because he all of a sudden has this purpose, or believes that he has this purpose to find this girl. And so it was really a look at what happens, after trauma as a child.
Mhm.
Can you kind of write your own ending? Because sometimes it feels a bit like the path has been laid for us already. And so I wanted to look at that because We Begin at the End. We pick up Duchess at 13, put her down at 14, and everyone message saying what happens next. Is she okay? And I think All the Colors of the Dark goes some way to answering that question. If you have a difficult time when you're a kid, will you be okay? And for all the bad things that happen to them, I think that Patch and Saint are okay at the end of the book. Patch has finally found some peace, and he makes the best of this terrible situation.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely a hard story with some heavy themes, but it's not devoid of hope in the least. It
No, I don't
does.
think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really buoy your spirit, if anything.
yeah.
Um, Kelly had a question about your schooling specifically, so I feel like that's a great segue.
You want me to ask it, Kelly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi, Kelly. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Just to let you know, I do live in Florida and grew up going to Disney World and had my honeymoon there, so I completely agree with it being the happiest place on earth.
Yeah.
So, and but listening to you talk, I thought how thoughtful you are with your writing process and your character development. And then you talked about your school. So you kind of did answer this a little bit, but were you that thoughtful in school as well? Because school to me is a lot of memorization. And for me, you seem like somebody who absolutely does not want to memorize, wants to think about
No.
things. So if you weren't going to be an author when you got out of your rubbish school, what did you think that you might do? Or, have you always been this thoughtful too? That's kind of what I wanted to
Um,
know.
no. So I had no idea. I left school with no qualifications and no idea what to do with my life. And so I kind of naively thought that I would just find something or something would find me. And and it didn't really. I did so many jobs when I first left school. I did like bar work and sales and worked in stores and things like that. And nothing, I didn't really enjoy anything. And it was only I was working as an estate agent, a real estate agent, and was dropping leaflets through people's doors on the morning that I was mugged, so I was just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time, but in quite a rough part of London. And it was only because when I was halfway through writing The Colours of the Dark, I wondered why I was having such a hard time writing Patch and why it was so like really was really affecting me. And I look back over my life and I look back over the difficult things that had happened to me. And I traced it all the way back to being 10 years old. And my mum's partner was drinking and came into my room late one night and pulled me out of bed by my arm and broke my arm. And I had a really I had this really horrible night where I wasn't supposed to tell anyone what had happened until the morning because, the guy was really angry and didn't want to get in trouble as well. So he sent me back to my bedroom. So I had this really long night as a 10-year-old with a broken arm. And then in the morning had to tell my parents that I had done it playing football. And that was a lie that I stuck to, and I only told my dad about what really happened about 4 years ago or something like that. So I learned at that age, if something bad happens, keep your mouth shut. And I also learned that, I hated being a victim and I hated that feeling of being like powerless. So when someone pulled out a kitchen knife and tried to take my phone, I'd rather fight the guy than give him my phone because I didn't like as a 10-year-old feeling powerless. So I think that's probably why I ended up getting stabbed. And then I later went to work in the city and lost a lot of money, like lost $2 million on my first day of work, and didn't tell anyone and got myself into loads of trouble because I'd learned as a kid, if something bad happens, don't tell anyone. So I learned all of these negative traits as a child, and they got me into loads of trouble. And but on the flip side, I found my way to writing and I learned to create and learned to empathize and learned to write children, that have a difficult time. I don't think I'd be able to tell the stories that I do had I not been through all of these things. And so it's a strange one because it's like someone asked me the other day if it was worth it, and it's an impossible question to answer because on the surface, of course, like I wouldn't choose this path for my kids. No one would, no one would want this for their own children. So it's about making the best of it and it's about finding, some kind of light in this darkness and kind of finding your way through it. And it took me a long time to get to this point. And for the first time, I feel like I'm okay. I've always felt slightly different to everyone else, but I think loads of people feel like that. Um, but yeah, that was a long answer to your question, wasn't
No, it was a wonderful answer, and even that answer was thoughtful. So, I mean, obviously, you do a lot of thinking about things, which I think is fantastic. So, thank you very much.
It seems like a lot of your books and storylines have these themes of heartbreak and sacrifice and loyalty, but then ultimately redemption. Um, do you feel like your past has kind of primed you for those themes, or why do you feel like you're drawn to them? Because you write them so well and they really resonate with readers.
it? I think it was like I was interested in a sliding doors moment, and we have them. We all have them in our lives. We have these times where you meet someone that it's unexpected. Maybe you walk into a bar and meet your partner. What if you hadn't walked into that bar at that exact time? You wouldn't have met the person. What if you had skipped a job interview or made it to a job interview or missed an exam? Life turns on a knife edge like that. And I felt like I was quite like a normal kid until I was 10. And then, this thing happened. And then afterwards, I felt completely different. And I felt like my path had been slightly altered because my brother went to a good university and got a good job straight from school. And I went a completely different road. I stopped doing well at school and started getting into trouble and had problems with drink and drugs and things like that. And I think that, I think we're formed at this age, the people that we're going to be. And so I go back to like Duchess is 13, Patch and Saint are 13. It's like a pivotal time, isn't it? It's right. My son is 13 at the moment. You're still very much a child, but your mind is open all of a sudden. You see more of the world and you see more of the good and bad, and you begin to form your opinions and you begin to become the person that you're going to be. But what happens if something terrible happens to you? What happens if that path is so badly altered that you can't find your way back again? And I felt a bit like that was what had happened to me. And it took me like, God, like 30 years to find my way back again. So like I wanted to follow characters on that journey. I wanted to follow Patch and Saint. And it's not just Patch that it happens to, because although he bears the brunt of it, everyone involved is badly affected by it. Saint is a girl that would have gone to an Ivy League school, and lived a completely different life had her best friend not been abducted. And there's nothing to say that she isn't happy and she's not done something worthwhile. It's just different, and I think that's why Norma tears her hair out, because she knows that Saint is meant for something else. And as much as she likes Patch, Patch is kind of a weight around Saint's ankle. Well, that's how she sees him. Nothing good can come from this friendship, not for my granddaughter. And so I wanted to again hang this big story on the shoulders of children.
Yeah, they carry it well.
Yeah, but you never really know, because it's quite difficult to write kids, and I read a lot of books where they get it wrong. And sometimes my worst messages are when people message me and say that the kids, kids don't talk like that, kids don't think like that. And I think that you're lucky if you think that, because you haven't met kids that have been in trouble or had something terrible happen to them, because they grow up overnight. All of a sudden your childhood is gone, and you're forced to see the world completely differently.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great perspective. In our book club discussion that we had right before you hopped on, we were talking a little bit about Grace.
Mhm.
And Jessica has a question about Grace that I love. So, Jess, if you're free, would you ask that?
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Thank you for being on here. And honestly, I'm absolutely blown away by just your uh, how genuine you are and the background that you just gave behind all of that, and how hard it probably is to share that to some extent. But
Thanks.
it's so inspiring, and I just I love that. I mean, you've made it through so much and turned it into something that you can share with everyone and help other people to get through trauma. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I just absolutely loved just how beautifully complex the story was. At first, it took me a little bit to get into it, and then I was just, hooked. And there's so many parts that stuck with me. I think um, there were just these parts that I still think about. The paintings, the details of the paintings are just beautiful. And then also something that stuck out with me that had to do with details was just about Grace and um, all the different descriptions that she would tell Patch throughout the story. And I didn't realize how important that was until later on when you start finding out that actually she's talking about where the girls are by describing those locations. So it was just amazing how that all connected when you look back. It's so complex and so intricately woven in, beautiful. So my question is, did you have like a map that you had all these different locations? Did you know that it was all going to be woven in at the beginning, or what was the process of that with these cities and the meaning? Because it's so like interspersed so well that you don't even realize it till all of a sudden this moment of, oh my gosh, it all connects.
Yeah. So thank you. There's no planning. There's no real plan. I just know how the story's going to end. I knew that Patch
Okay.
would end up on a pirate ship somewhere, and I knew that he would be okay, and I knew that he would find Grace, and I knew that she would, within her scenes, be giving him clues to
Okay.
find who she is. And from there I began working backwards. So I wrote some of the later scenes, and then
Okay.
I began mapping it out. And I do have a big map of the US.
Oh,
And
I was hoping you would.
yeah, and I planned a lot of Patch's routes around, and where he travels and what he sees. And I had this long list of of the most beautiful sights, and I really wanted Patch to see them, because he had been robbed of so much and stolen, like a year of his life gone to darkness. I wanted him to see all this stuff. And so it was about mixing them, it was about Patch taking this route, not realizing it, and Grace sending him on this road, seeing these beautiful things. And it was about marrying the two, and it was a nightmare, to be honest. It was so difficult to get it
I
right. It
bet.
was so like, like we had so many cuts and we had so many scenes where, if you take a slight wrong turn, if you say the wrong thing, people will connect it, it will ruin the mystery. If you don't say enough, it's impossible and to get to the end. And so it was all about it standing up to a second read. So I wanted someone to read it, the entire book, then go back if they wanted to the beginning and read it very differently and see everything, that they had missed the first time round. And so I read it like 2,000 times by the end of it, when I was totally sick of it, when I couldn't change a single word in it. I thought we were close to done. And then it goes to my editor and we change almost every word in it again, and then again, and then so it's this painstaking process, but with no real planning involved, just like a feeling, I feel that this is right, and then hopefully you get there, and hopefully it's worth it at the end, because I finished this one, and the same with We Begin at the end, and I genuinely feel like I can't do it again, or I don't want to do it again. I think that I won't write another book, because it was too difficult, and it was too, particularly this one, writing Patch. I didn't realize why it was so hard until halfway through, when I realized that I'd written loads of the stuff that I'd been through as a kid, and now of course I'm starting the new book because I can't not write, so it's that, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I love that. Thank you. And even though there wasn't a plan, I mean, in your head and in your subconscious, there was some kind of
It was, yeah,
it was a connection that you were,
yeah, there was
yeah.
a road I was going down, and I wanted Patch to,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Thank you.
And Kim has a follow-up question that she's asking. She said, when did you work out that Patch would find out Grace's location from the fellow inmate?
That was very early. So that I knew that Patch was painting his version of the street scene, of the town that Grace had described. And I knew that the first person that bought Patch's painting would be the wife of the warden and would hang it in his office later on. So I knew it from that stage. So I knew that from really early on, that was where we were heading. But I had to get Patch from his late teens and his first art showing, in Montclair, to prison as when he's in his 30s. So there was a long road between the two. There was this massive story that had to come
Yeah.
between point A and point B. But it was all like, I knew that in like the first page or two, it talks about his Playboy, his copy of Playboy, the Ursula Andress one, and I knew that that would be the very same copy that Tug would want when he's in prison, and that would be how that trade would be made, which would help him escape from prison. And that's from page 1 to page 570 or something like that. So you're kind of sowing all these seeds throughout the book, and then at some point that will pay off. But yeah, it's God, just talking about it makes me not want to do it again. It's so difficult.
Oh no, stop talking. Stop.
I think Rebecca on here, who's seen you live and she's such a huge
Hi,
fan.
Rebecca. I
Yeah,
love Rebecca. She's
Uh,
so
she
lovely.
loves
She's
you
the
too.
most lovely person.
She really is, isn't she?
Mhm.
Thank you. Can I just say one thing? Because it needs to be said in person. I obviously messaged you this. So we've had only a handful of authors. I would say Ethan, Joella, Emma, what's her last name?
Right.
Gray,
Yes,
Emma
thank
Gray.
you. And you, where just by seeing you in person and hearing the story, you delivered it a little differently there. But there needs to be said that there are certain authors that just hit differently and offer almost like a therapy session. And you guys, he unlocked something in me that I didn't know I was carrying just based on the stuff he brought forth. And I couldn't figure out for the longest time why, like, Duchess stuck with me, and so I just needed to thank you for your writing, just
That's so
simply
lovely.
for that. Yeah.
Well, I was
Yeah.
saying, like Rebecca mentioned, you should be teaching like a master
Masterclass.
writing class,
Yeah.
and I 100% agree. Even just like as an English teacher, having students do what you do, whereas you put the picture in front of you, to get your settings, five
Mhm.
senses down. That's such a smart, brilliant thing. And I feel like so many authors can benefit from all this plotting that you do. And I mean, it's just so brilliant. Like everybody is wowed, blown away by how much
But I
time.
think I said to Rebecca that the imposter syndrome would be too great. Like I can't imagine, like I'm certain that I'm doing a million things wrong, technique wise, and I would teach terrible terrible methods to
I was
everyone.
so lucky to hear from you. I just, maybe
Yeah.
something in the future you can think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, I really wanted to go to university. It's what my big regret that I didn't go to university. So I
Mhm.
would like to go back in some way, in some form, and whether that's teaching or something, I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in you. I can see it.
Mhm. Definitely. I want to circle back one question for Grace that I wanted to clear up is when we were talking in book club, um, we each had different perceptions about Grace and if she was real or not. And we kind of varied on if we believed she was real or if she wasn't, or like some people had doubts that she was, and some people were sure that she absolutely was real. I was so hopeful that she was real. And I was like, Chris, if you break my heart, I'm gonna be so upset. Did you set that up so it was a little bit unclear as to if she was actually real or not, or is that just our interpretation of how it came across?
In my mind, she is 100% real. Yeah, I think,
Okay. I
yeah.
thought you were trying to trick me.
No, I think like obviously it's written in a way where you don't know, for sure, because I think there's moments of doubt even in Patch's mind. Sometimes he wavers and thinks, this is like the most impossible mission, that this task he set himself. And he knows that everyone thinks that he's crazy. Even Saint has moments, where she thinks that this can't possibly be. And so it was writing those, of course, if you're invested in the characters, you sometimes think what Saint thinks. It's just natural. You're reading, you're spending so much of your time with her, and she's so close to Patch that if she doesn't believe Grace is real, there might be moments where you don't. But I don't think I could have done it to the readers or to Patch, or to Saint, to have them go on this journey and not at least meet Grace at the end of it. So I knew that she was real, and I set out to write her, at the very end. I knew that she was coming. And that discovery, that those scenes in the barn at the end were rewritten like maybe 100 times with like editors and like everyone's involvement. And yeah, it was a tough edit. But the best books are always a tough edit.
Mhm. Well, thanks for making her come to life.
Yeah.
Okay, Kim has a question about one of Saint's chapters. Go ahead, Kim.
Hi there. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for joining
Okay.
us. I feel like it's a privilege to have you and hear what you say. So, I think one of Saint's chapters that impacted me most profoundly and unexpectedly was when she went to visit or to take the precious gifts to her son,
Mhm.
and that really surprised me that she did not even have the abortion. But it was just, I think that you the way you wrote that chapter and coming full circle, it was just so beautiful and just touched me, and that her son kept bees,
Mhm.
also kept bees,
Yeah.
was so beautiful. And I just wanted to tell you that and thank you for that. And yeah,
Yeah,
good
it
job.
was, thank you. It was really difficult to write, actually. And I I was looking forward to writing it and kind of dreading it, because I left some of the scenes to the very end and I thought I knew I'm going to have to write this at some point, and I was putting it off and putting it off, and then spent like a month just working on it, and it was tough to write because I really wanted everything for Saint, but she makes this pact with God at the beginning of the book. She says if you bring back Patch safely, then I'll live a life where, I don't sin or do anything wrong, and her grandmother kind of teaches her that abortion is a sin, and so you can see her thought process, but it's such a difficult thought process to follow, for her particularly because she marries the wrong person and he's abusive, and like it goes against everything that Norma would want for her, but she can't bring herself to tell her grandmother that, because Norma would take it to heart. She says she makes Saint give Jimmy a chance, and she says if it doesn't work out, it's on me. And Saint can't put it on her, so instead takes a load of kind of grief, and she has a bad name in the town, and she has a really difficult time, but it's her faith that gets her through it, not just in God, but in Patch, in her grandmother, and in herself, that she's doing the right thing. And I think we only really realize that. I think it's the biggest shock in the book, that part, because it's very easy to miss. It's like loads of people said, did I miss something? And it's there. She says she goes back to her apartment in the city and she doesn't see anyone. She takes some time off of work, and she has a really difficult 6 months where she doesn't see her grandmother and doesn't see anyone. And so it's there, but it's written in such a way that you could easily skim over it because it seems like a nothing. It seems like she's been beaten up, and she's recovering, and it's her ego that's bruised, and she's having this difficult time, but in actual fact she's doing something that she feels like she needs to do. Are you muted, Kelly?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Kristen was wondering if you ever considered having Saint tell Norma that she gave the baby up for adoption so that Norma wouldn't be so devastated by the thought of abortion.
um I think that to do that, Saint probably would have had to say what had happened, with Jimmy. And I don't think she could do that to Norma. She couldn't let Norma think that she had set her up with someone that is basically, just a horrible person, and kind of has these monstrous qualities. He will kick and punch his partner, his wife. And so I think she does it as much for Norma. And um and so and she has a difficult relationship with her grandmother afterwards, because Norma accuses her of, just giving up on her marriage and quitting too easily. And Saint knows what would happen if she told her the truth. It would destroy her, completely and utterly destroy her. And I don't think Norma would just accept it if Saint said, I don't want to have his baby, I'm giving it up for adoption, because she knows her too well. I don't know if Saint would have been able to hold that line as well, you know. She would probably see through it. But yeah, it's definitely something I considered.
Well, before we wrap things up with you, I would love for you to talk a little bit about what's next for you. And I hate to even ask because it sounds like a tortured
It's okay.
experience.
There's worse jobs in the world. It's a book called The Timekeeper, and I'm moving even further away from crime. So this one's an outright love story. And my editor would describe it as the time traveler's wife meets the fault in our stars. And yeah, and we will be maybe another 3 years at best, I think. So there's some time to wait, but yeah, it's a big, big love story.
That gives us something to look forward to. So that's great.
Definitely.
How exciting.
You don't have to cut so much. We'll take a big book. Make it meaty. That's fine. Before we sign off, let's grab a picture. If you got your book handy or an audio book or a Kindle,
Yeah.
that works too.
All right. I'm going to get this set up.
Oh, Jenny said my book's loaned out. That's okay.
That's okay. You can just smile if you'd like to be. I have two screens though, so I'm going to take
Two of them.
two
Okay.
photos. Ready? All right. One, two, cheese. Okay, and I'm going to do it one more. Okay. One, two, three. Got it.
Awesome. Well, Chris,
Thank you.
thank you so much. This was incredible, and we appreciate you and are rooting for you in your next steps.
Thank you very much. This was so fun. Thank you for doing it. Thank you all for coming.
Thank
Thank
you for being
you.
Thank you,
you.
Chris. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks a lot. See
Enjoy
ya.
the rest of the tours.
And you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.